3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? So I have my little skull armored snail here, and I want to give him some texture. Texture is really easy to add in Nomad Sculpt. Well, it's a little tricky, but once you kind of get a hang of it, it's pretty easy. So the first thing you want to do is download some sort of texture. I'll show you mine. So I'm just using the brush tool, but I just tapped it and hit clone. So I have another one down here. Because sometimes when I adjust any tool, I like to clone it and adjust the clone. That way I have the default one, stays default, and you don't have to worry about it. So if you're in your brush tool and you have this little pencil, then you have stroke. So we're going to keep all this stuff like it is. Alpha is where you'll actually add the texture. So this is where you want to add the texture. And all this stuff is pretty standard. I think this should be how it is by default, but if not, you can see my screen here. You can see where everything is. And of course, you can add your texture. You can tap here, and I have a bunch of textures that I downloaded. And you can also hit import and then import your image. So you just want to get like your image, your texture. You can try something like pixels. They might have some, I don't know, let's see if it has like a skin texture. So you can try sites like Pexels, where everything is free, or you can just Google, things like this work, or you can just Google a texture and you can use that. So it depends on whatever you're using. So I'm going to use this one. This isn't necessarily a snail texture, but I think it'll work. So, there is one thing. I think it's going to be on surface by default. I usually use screen project. I find that it moves the actual mesh less. When I use surface, it kind of like distorts it and makes it really big. See how it adds like so much mass? And I don't really like that. I want it to maintain this shape. So that's the only change. I'm just going to use screen project. And again, that's in this menu, and we're using the brush tool, but we're just using a clone brush tool. So we're using brush 2. We have our texture. We went here, we went to alpha, and we have our texture here. The fall off this is our fall off. And I think I think you want to have the soft edges. Otherwise you can see like this, it'll be like a square. So you want to have the soft edges like that. I think everything else is pretty much default. This is the default pressure, but this is the most important. So also, one thing I've noticed, you have to put the intensity down to like 1%, and I raised the size up a bit, because if this is any more, well, we can practice with it, but I put mine down to 1%. So when we add our texture, I'm not going to press too hard. I'm just kind of go lightly and see how it works. It seems like it's working pretty well. You can see the texture there. So I don't have symmetry on because the whole thing is not completely symmetrical, but so anyway, you see the symmetry. I'm not pressing too hard because I don't want to, I want to maintain the shape of snail that I made. So I don't want to press too hard. And then you just go around, whoops. And sometimes you have to be careful, because if you press too hard, then the texture might come through a little too strong. So just be aware of that. I know it's a little dark. Make sure you can see this. It's like the dark side of the moon. But I mean, that's pretty much it. And then you can have your texture. And I think this texture looks pretty good. Let's see if we can look at it better with anyway, it's not that easy to see. I'm actually not sure why. I don't know, all my resolution's up. But yeah, so it's looking pretty good. So at least it has some texture now. And also there's, things like for the shell, let's see if we can put some texture on the shell too. And if you're not sure about the texture, or you think you might want to change the texture, you can also add a layer. You can tap here, add a layer, name it texture, or text for short. And you can add a texture on that layer. So let's say you add something and you're like, I don't like that. Then you can like hide it and try something else and add a new layer. So, oops. Let's undo that. For the shell, I might do like let's go to the alpha and change this. It's a little tricky because these are all going in one direction, so this probably won't work, but it is close. Feels like a shell. But I don't know, let's see what we can get. The shell's a little hard to see too. Let's change the color of the shell. See if that helps. Okay, so it's kind of going in a funny directions, but you can see it is adding some texture, but I just don't have that much control over it, so I probably wouldn't use it. But for something like the shell, I might even just do manual textures, just using crease and stuff like that. You can always do that option as well, and that way you have like a little more control, and it still looks pretty good. But yeah, that's enough to play around with. Those are my settings when I want to add texture, and so far so good. All right, I'm gonna bring this guy over in the blender, so look out for him soon. Keep drawing, keep sculpting. I'll see you all in the next video.